Everybody, it's Cheryl. I wanted to make a video of installing some bushings. I've been working on this sessions movement that had lost some power through the power train, and when I checked, there was a lot of play. Every one of these little green Sharpie marks is bushings that need to be done. Spoke with the group expert Sean. He said, when you're doing bushings, do them all. He said, don't do 2 or 3, do them all. The clock's 100 years old, just go ahead and do them all. And that was pretty much the case on the strike side anyway. Everything needed to be done. So I got KWM bushings and knockoffs, the system, the American-made size KWMs. This is assortment number 1, so it has basically L14 to L21. Everything I circled here is in that set. And I believe this is the bronze one from Time Savers. The brass one is a little more expensive. The bronze one is like $33 for 10 each of 10 different sizes. So 33 cents a piece, not too bad. So if you get the actual KWM ones, they're not in an assortment like this. They go in numerical order, so it's going to go 18, 19, 20, 21. This one has 67, 68 stuck in it in this assortment. The KWM actual assortment doesn't. You have to buy the 60s separate. So that would mean that anything between 1.7 and 1.85, which would be the L22 and that's L21, you would have to choose between those two. So you could put in the L21 and use your smoothing broaches and smooth it out some to make it a little bit bigger. But I like the fact that the combination has all the in-between sizes, so that's why I got these. So we're going to go from scratch how you would pick what size bushing to use. Hopefully you've all got calipers. They're very valuable. Just, you need them. Measuring small numbers like this. Turn it on. Push your power if it's an automatic one. I've got another one that's not digital. You have to actually read the lines on it. That was interesting to learn how to do. Zero it before you use it the first time. You want to measure the size of your pivot. About 1.46. Take a couple different measurements. 1.45, 1.46. The other side is going to measure different. You got to measure both sides because when you polish your pivots, you're going to take off a little bit of material. So polish your pivots first and then measure and see what size your pivot is. So you need 2 numbers to use this KWM scale. You need the size of your pivot, the size of your plate. This plate is about 1.48, 1.49, basically 1.5, 1.49. So if you look across the top of this scale of all the different options available, you find across the top line your plate thickness. That's your height of your bushing. So your plate thickness, if you have a 1.0 millimeter plate, if you have a newer cuckoo clock, or something that's got a thinner plate, you're going to look down this column. This one, it was almost 1.5, so I'm going to go with this one because the 1.4 is going to give me a little bit of an oil well. So that's what I'm going to go with. So you look down this column and you look across. This was the size of my pivot, 1.45, 1.46, 1.47. So between 1.45 and 1.5 comes straight across. I need L20. So if I had the KWM reamers, which I don't because everybody's got them on back order, I would look up here and go, okay, I need reamer number 3. It's going to ream it out 2.68, and my bushing diameter is 2.7, so I just use the reamer. It goes to the correct size, and I drop in my bushing. So since I don't have reamers, I'm using broaches. I'm using cutting broaches and then smoothing broaches on the inside of the bushing if it needs it. So we've got our 2 measurements. We look right here. Here's number 20. It doesn't say L20 because it is an imitation KWM system. But there's number 20. You open the box, you get out your one. Hopefully you have something like this because they are not easy to grab. They're tiny and there's a bunch of them in these little spaces right here. I'll show you. The box does not come flying open, which is good. You got a little control over it. But pay attention to which way your lid was on because there's nothing marking that once you get it off. So you would just go in here and get your one bushing. Put your lid back on. Don't forget that because you bump the box. They're all over. You're trying to guess tenths of a millimeter. So there's one bushing. It has a little sanded side, depressed side on that side. That's what's going to be your oil well when you're done, when it's installed. This side is, the other side is real flat. My husband just brought me some supper. He's so wonderful. I've been working on these bushings all day to get like 8 of them installed because I'd never done them before. So the flat side is the side you're going to have to the top that you're tapping down. You want to use your broaches and go from the inside of whichever plate you're working on, whether it's your front plate or your back plate. You're working from the inside out. Hang on. Alright, so we have our bushing out. Next thing you want to get out are your broaches. They come in sets. You will need to find the ones you need to work with by measuring with your calipers. So if we had the reamer, it would go to 2.68. So we're going to look for a reamer. Oops, sorry, a cutting broach that's about 2.5. And this is the trick I have for you, because I'm going to show you what happened when I did not do this. When you go to measure this cutting broach, don't just snap it in here and snug it down as tight as you can and go, okay, that's how big it is. You need to kind of rotate it. There's always the 5-sided cutting part of it, then a smooth part, and then a square part at the bottom to be able to put it in your pin vise. So you want to measure toward the bottom as big as it can get before the smooth part starts. This one's going to cut up to 2 millimeters. But when you're spinning it, it's a little bit bigger, about 2.1. And the same with the others. This one will go up to about 2.4, 2.5 when it's spinning. Because you're not going to be perfectly perpendicular every second. You're going to ream that hole out a little bit bigger than the biggest size of that. So make sure you go smaller. I originally had out another one to go higher. To take it, I measured and got up to about 2.65 and put a little Sharpie line on there and said, okay, that's what I need to go to, and that's what I did, and I reamed it out to there, and the bushing just fell through the hole. So make sure you stop about 2/10 of a millimeter smaller than you think it needs to be. Alright, so we're going to take our first one. I'm doing the time side. I am down to this one. I've got this one marked. That's the back side. We want to go from the inside. The outside doesn't matter. It's pretty. You want it to look nice, but the inside is what matters because that's where your movement's going to be rubbing. So you want to go to the inside. When you're first starting this out, make sure you double check, spin around, make sure you are staying perpendicular to this surface all the time. You don't want to be up, down, in, out, and ream it at an angle because you're going to put a bind on your pivot and it's not going to work. The more of these that you do, the more you kind of get a sense of when you're perpendicular. If you give just the slightest bit of resistance, it's going to carry through in the same angle that it is. If you give a lot of resistance and you're at an angle, yeah, you can start torquing it out and get it crooked. But if you're just doing gentle pressure and just keep turning and check every so often, you're going to get a nice straight hole. It's going to work good for you. So I'm going to take this all the way down slowly to there, and that's going to get us about a 2.0 millimeter hole. And then we will switch and do the other one, and that'll get us up to about 2.5. And then I'm just going to tap it in. It will go in. It will make the hole a little bit snugger. If we need to, we can use a smoothing broach to make the inside hole of the bush a little bit bigger if it's too tight on our pivot. But too tight is better than too loose. Too loose involves a lot of things. Soldering, pinging. We're going to talk about those a little bit too, and I'll show you my first few attempts at doing this today. Never done it. Watched videos, talked to Mark Munnerland, talked to Sean. They both have, they're both in the cloth groups on Facebook, and have YouTube channels, so got good videos that they can watch. They're also great. Reach out to them. They answer any question you have. They are great help. They just want to share their knowledge, and they want to save you some of the headache that you get when you're trying to do this on your own for the first time. There's no point in recreating the wheel. I say that over and over. Get what knowledge you can from people that have already been doing it. They have a wealth of knowledge to share, and they don't mind doing it, or they wouldn't be part of these groups on Facebook. You need to go really slow. You don't need to be in a hurry. I've pretty much gone one direction. I mean, you could go both. You could go back and forth, but I feel like I would get more oblong, more off-center possibly, so I've just been turning one direction. Alright, we're just about at the end of that one. Sometimes you got to turn the other way to get it backed off of there. Okay, then we're going to go up to our final size. The brooches really aren't bad to do. The reamers are nice because they're the size that you're looking for. But if you put them on a drill bit and you go in and back out and the drill is still on, you can make the hole too big with those too, because they're only 0.02 smaller than the bushing that you're going to put in. So if you are off center at all and you're doing a drill and it's on when you pull back out of the hole, you could very easily add 0.02 of a millimeter in there and make it difficult. It hasn't been bad doing them by hand. But if you have carpal tunnel or arthritis in your hands, there's a, that would be why you would use a drill or a Dremel. There are bushing machines out there. There's all kind of equipment if you get into it professionally. You can spend a lot of money buying equipment, lathes and bushing press, drill press, all kind of things you can buy to make it easier. But if you're only doing a dozen clocks in a year, it's not worth it. Alright, this is a KWM handle, and this is what's called a chamfer. There's two different sizes of the chamfers that you can get. This is the smaller size. This goes in the hole when you're done and just gets the rough edges off. Right now I can feel it sticking up. You could sand it, but this little tool just goes whoop and knocks it off, and now it's really smooth. So we're going to do that to both sides. Smoothed off our hole. Alright, then I'm going to take this little staking block. It's very easy to get mixed up on which hole you're in. You really need to mark them. You really need to double check. It's easy to get switched from one side to the other when you're going from the front plate to the back plate, so double check yourself a lot. People that have done it for a long time get mixed up. So, alright, so I'm going to double check my little bushing and make sure that the dipped in part is facing out, because this is the inside. We want it flat here. We want the oil to stay on the outside. Alright, this is just a little tap. You want it to be flush. Keep going until you are flush on the inside. It doesn't matter if it sticks out on the outside a little bit, but it's got to be flush in here. Otherwise you're not going to have end shake. I'm still able to hang it up on my fingernail, so I'm going to go a little bit more. And that feels good. Maybe slightly countersunk, which is perfect. Okay, I always leave my wheel out here that I'm working on because, you know, when you got multiple parts everywhere, it's easy to grab the wrong one. All of these pivots will not be the same size. The next one that I'm going to do is a bigger one, takes a bigger bushing, so help yourself and keep the one you're working on close at hand. Alright, so my drawing says this is the back of the movement. This one goes this way. Alright, so that one looks good. It's spinning, it's snug, it's not wobbling around too much. Alright, we're going to take the front of the plate and put on. I've already rebushed the front. So you put the two back together, snap your posts in. I have not been putting the nuts on, I've just been holding it snug, checking my spin. I've got good in play, it's going back and forth nicely, and I've got good spin, so I don't need to take the smoothing broaches and remount the inside of the thing. If you're spinning well, if you got plenty of room, you don't have to do that to every one of them. So I'm going to do this last one, and then I'm going to put this side back together and put some power to it and see if I'm still losing power. I think it's going to take care of it having good tight bushings. This one was so shaky before. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. I left out something. If you do mess up, if you do mess up one that you think is really important. This movement is not super important to me. It's in pretty bad shape, so it's a good one to practice doing bushings on. Here's my first bushing. See how bad that is? Tapped it all around on the outside, tapped it all around on the inside. This is the one that I reamed out up to the mark that I made on this cutting broach, and the bushing just fell straight through the hole because it was too big. So I talked to Mark Munnerlin, and he suggested that I ping it. So I took my punch, I pinged all around the hole, pinged all around it outside too, because all three of these that I did, the first three that I did, were too big. They slowly got better. I finally figured out what I was doing with my calipers by not turning the cutting broach around. I was able to snug a smaller measurement than when it's turning, so I was cutting too big of a hole. So I pinged the holes, got them tighter. This one I broached back out a little bit after I pinged it. I was able to put bushings in each one of those holes. Now they're nice and snug. I mean, it's not gorgeous, but it's going to work well. It's not going to hinder the performance of it, and it's going to be closed up in a clock, so it really doesn't matter. But I share these things with you so that maybe it'll save you from making the same mistakes. Just bet on going 2/10 of a millimeter less than you think you're going to need to, and you're going to be surprised that it may still be pretty close to being too big. Like everybody just says, go slow, take your time, measure, check frequently. Enjoy, guys.